Good evening and thank you for joining us on Sunday Interview. I'm your host, Grevazio Zulu. Now, waste management remains a huge challenge with tons of garbage generated across the country every day. And much of this waste is either poorly managed or uncollected, thereby causing pollution, disease, and a risk to the environment. The attitude towards cleanliness also remains poor, with many residents waiting to be pushed before they can do the right thing and stop littering. Government is trying to re-energize the Keep Zambia Clean campaign and has put in place measures that include shutting down business for 2 hours every last Saturday of the month. How far can this go in retaining the country's lost status as a garden nation? Local Government Permanent Secretary Amos Mulupenga is on the program to discuss the Keep Zambia Clean and Green campaign. Sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, Keep Zambia Clean campaign is not a new topic in Zambia. No. It was launched way back in 2007 by President Levi Mwanawasa, and at that time it was called Make Zambia Clean and Healthy. What is new in the launch by President Lungu last month?
You are right that this is not a new program, and that is why we appropriately titled it as a relaunch. So we were just relaunching a campaign that was once there, but then lost the steam and cooled off. And His Excellency did, again learning from the past and moving with the times, His Excellency Mr. Edgar Chagwalungu did indicate that as we are preparing to relaunch, let's also relook at the nomenclature of our campaign. It was, like you did indicate, Keep Zambia Clean and Health campaign. But this one is Keep Zambia Clean, Green, and Healthy. There's an element of greening that has been introduced, meaning we need to plant trees, look at, take care of our environment, and all those things that go with that. Of course, you've talked about what is different. What is different is that we have tried to learn from the past failures. Like you rightly observed, this was initiated or introduced during the time of the late President Levi Mwanawasa, and then it started with a lot of publicity, a lot of generated a lot of interest, but within a short period of time, it cooled off. So, trying to learn from the past failures or mistakes, we are trying to improve on as we have relaunched the campaign.
There seems to be a feeling that we're probably investing too much in this slogan and it loses meaning over time. And did you really try to think about that? It's probably just a slogan anyway to many Zambians.
Indeed, some people might think so, but that is not the case. And if you listen to the President yesterday when we were in Charleston on this same campaign, he refused to speak. He walked to the podium and he said, "We've relaunched the program, I gave the policy direction, and I've come here not to speak again but to work. So let's go and work." So we are cutting on the talk and investing more in the work itself. But there will be one particular noise that will be constant coming through our mass media channels, just like the noise you have allowed me to make now, to keep talking about it. And that is why to some it might seem like a slogan, but this is deliberate because we realize that the biggest problem is in the attitudes, and we can only attack those attitudes, change those attitudes by continuously talking about these issues, discussing. And when we say by us continuing, we are not talking about us in the ministry or in government generally. We want this to be the people's campaign, the people's program, and that is one of the failures of the past because it was not owned by the general public. It's like this is a pronouncement from the president or from the minister, and then the rest will either just give that support to the president. Otherwise, they don't see it as their program, and this is where we are trying to make a difference.
You've mentioned one lesson you've learned, that probably that was owned by government. Any other lessons that you've learned from the past? I know that was a big campaign, vehicles branded, and no one thought it could fail, but it failed.
Yes, because again, it was
government
not
lost
owned.
Momentum.
Not government. Let's just say all of us.
The Zambians lost.
The Zambians.
They're not interested.
That is why we want to go where it matters most. It's like we've been just treating we are not not treating the root cause. We are not going to the root cause. Now, we see that this is much more of, when we talk about you make Zambia clean and green, it's basically talking about hygiene. And again, going back to the issues of cholera. And maybe that is a bit of a background as to why this program has been relaunched in this fashion. You recall that towards the end of last year, we had an outbreak of cholera, and we lost some lives, unfortunately. And because the president understood what was at the center of that epidemic or that breakout, he had to use his powers as commander-in-chief of the armed forces to instruct the men and women in uniform to step in and go and clean the city. And you know that is not their usual mandate as men and women in uniform, but they are always there in times of a crisis, and that was a crisis that we had. So the president saw we have a crisis in our hands. If we don't make proper intervention measures, we are going to lose lives. So they went in. We also what happened. The historical garbage which had formed mountains over the years was demolished. The streets of Lusaka were clean again. They went all over in the compound, and everyone was happy. And we saw the cholera cases started nosediving up to the point where we are now. That was a clear demonstration that this disease is connected to filth or dirt or lack of hygiene. Now, to sustain what had been gained at that moment, the question was, how do we move forward? And so the president had to talk to our minister, Honorable Vincent Mwale, to say, I'm not going to keep those men and women in uniform forever in the streets on Cairo Road. They belong to the barracks. So as I am preparing to demobilize, what is your strategy to sustain what we have achieved now? And this is what we're trying to keep. And so you saw that at the beginning of this year, around February, March, Honorable Mwale did issue Starter Instrument number 10, basically trying to deal with the issues of street vending and the issues touching on hygiene. That was the essence. And that was a starting point. So the men and women in uniform are withdrawn. How do we proceed? Then we reminded ourselves that as a Minister of Local Government, we are the custodians of this campaign to keep the country clean and healthy. So we have our local authorities, and also through the various stakeholders, we need to prosecute this idea. And that is why now discussion started. How best do we deal with this? How can we move it forward, learning from the past mistakes? The same questions we were asking ourselves. And even as we are doing this, we have not finished with that process. It's just that we had to start. Of course, we had sufficient learning points to enable us move forward. So when we were all clear that we needed to do this, then we consulted the president, and that was the input from the president to say, yes, I agree, I'll be available. I'll give you all the support, but let's also introduce the aspect of green. And I had to instruct the Minister of Land to work closely with us so that we don't just clean, we should also look at the environment in totality.
And making it green.
Yes.
Now, this is, like you stated, and I want to re-emphasize it again, this is an issue of attitude.
Yes.
You can have as many men in uniform on the streets as you want, but the moment they look away, the moment they are withdrawn, the garbage is back on the street. People are throwing back the litter onto the street. So it's more of an attitude, it's a habit.
Yes, and when you say, what are the lessons learned from the past campaign, you can see that even now, these are still the lessons, and one issue is coming out, attitude.
So how are we going to tackle that?
And that is why...
Because we know that, for instance, you spoke about cholera, but it seems we're back from where we started, back to where we started. A lot of institutions no longer have to force people to wash their hands.
That's true, and that is why we are concerned, and we want to make noise every day, every time, hoping that whatever we'll be saying will not fall on deaf ears. The challenge has been the attitude, because people don't see this as an important activity, just to keep hygiene. to keep our environment. This is the source. If we don't learn lessons from the last year's epidemic, come this rainy season, we'll go back to that same. And that is why I want to ensure that we entrench this change of attitude now, so that come the next rainy season, everyone will know what is expected.
Are you working with schools? That's where the challenge is. People are brought up not caring about the environment, not caring about hygiene.
Yes.
And there's no way they're going to change when they're old.
We are working with all the institutions, but that is an interesting point you have raised. Again, learning from the past, we realize that we have to invest in the youth, the young children. And that is why you see that yesterday's activity where the president was in Charleston, there were children there. There were pupils in primary, not secondary schools. We were at Chakunkula Primary School. And all the people who spoke at that function were entrenching that same issue of the seedlings of today are the forests of tomorrow. Now, it depends on how we interact with the youth or the young, or our children today. The way we mold them I remember when we were in primary school, junior primary school, I don't know if there's senior primary school, grade 3, grade 2, those years, Uncle Jeff's dad was appearing so much marketing Colgate, and the members of staff would move from school to school, giving out toothbrushes and then toothpaste, and teaching us, the young children, on how to take care of our dental health, how to brush. You do it this way. You have to brush when you in the morning and before you go to sleep, and all those lessons and I'm passing on to my children. I learned that through that interaction, and so that's an important point. That one of these areas we need to focus on are the children, and that is why you saw we had 2 ministers yesterday, Professor Luo in charge of higher education, and Honorable Mabumba in charge of general education. And General Mabumba was very clear and categorical in his message that we have to invest in those children so that we start changing. The results may not be as fast as we want, but the moment we start tackling it that way, we will see that the children will be. Imagine if you throw a litter just like that, and you are reminded by your 8-year-old or 7-year-old that daddy, that is wrong. You feel guilt. And so the long and short of it is that this campaign, we will target it largely in trying to ensure that we change people's mindset, attitude, so that they take it as their program, they take it as a way of life. And that is why you have heard that Honorable Vincent Mali has appointed the various ambassadors or the champions to render a helping hand or to add a voice to this campaign, because these are opinion movers in society. So we have people coming from the traditional leaders, the church, and the corporate world generally. Some are coming from the media community. These people who are running popular shows, programs to talk about, because they have a large following. So those who value their voice, who believe in them, they can maybe they can.
Do we have enough laws? Do we have enough laws, PS, to deter people from littering?
Yes, I can say we have enough laws.
Which probably are not implemented.
The SI I talked about, in fact, this is we just improved it now. Honorable Mali just improved on it. This is an SI that was put in place by the late President Sata when he was the minister at local government. You remember in 1992-91, he came up with that SI, which raised some controversy. We built on it. It had about 22 or 23 offences. Honorable Mali pushed it to as 52 or 53 offences. Now, when you go through that SI, you find that all these things we are talking about are taken care of when you talk about the law. For example, the issues of street vending, now even buying from a street vendor. So if you find a street vendor and you are buying from there, who do you want to blame? Again, do you want to start phoning and say, Honorable Mari, what's happening? Vendors have gone back on the street. When you are the one who is actually encouraging that. Now, if there is a vendor on the street and you all shun that vendor, tomorrow you will have no reason to go back to that street because there will be no profit. You start looking for a place which will give him the market to sell his product. But we are the ones who are encouraging. Then at the end of the day, we say, bomb, we have to clear the vendors. They are back on the street. But we are the ones who are taking them back on the street.
So the problem here is not laws. The laws are there, but we are failing to implement them.
Yes, that is why for us we are looking at this matter much more as a moral issue than legal. Because laws can be in place. We have a law against murder, but people continue committing murder, and you know that
not on the scale as they litter, maybe.
Well, you should look at the statistics. It's just that maybe we concentrate on the high-profile cases. But the point I'm making is that when you have it in the mind, with or without the law, you will do the right thing. And that is what we want to focus on, so that we can, through some media sensitization campaigns, we can get people to start feeling guilty. We want, if they really have their conscience should prick them, accuse them, and convict them that they have to change.
But if we can't appeal to people's conscience, then we just need to enforce the law.
Yes,
maybe people now see that this is a deterrent. You're found buying from a vendor, you are penalized. You're found littering, you're penalized. People will learn from there.
That would be the last resort, and it's happening. Except maybe we need.
Shouldn't you put it as first resort, knowing that we failed before because of attitude, and as a way of enforcing attitude, we could now move towards enforcing the law.
We will reluctantly do that because. If you are targeting at changing the mind, you have to explain to people so that they appreciate why they should not do what they are asking them. The moment you do that, you will have won them, you will have converted them, and they will do the work for you. They will also convince the next one, the next one, the next one. Now here it's a question of you look around, you remind yourself that it's illegal to buy from a street vendor, and you are on the street. You've seen the vendor selling bananas, so you look around. You can't see the council police or anyone you think is in authority to implement the SI number 12 now because it's been amended. Then you dip into your pocket to buy. You get the point. Now, if it is within you, you've accepted it as something that should become part of you. You will see a vendor selling water and you are thirsty. You will endure the thirst and say, let me rush to that shop or reach home and drink. If you are not convinced about the attitudes, you just look around because that is all you are fearing. But we want you to own it, and that is why we see what we want to focus more on the compounds. Before the program, you were telling me about how you observed that this program was not so much into the. We want to take it to the compound so that people themselves. And by the way, I saw, in fact, maybe you're not entirely correct, because I saw a clip on TV2 with your news crew talking to some people in Chilanga. And that's setting
that particular committee did.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you be speaking tough, PS, other than telling the people, well, you can throw litter now. We have to educate you.
No. That's not.
We have to appeal to your conscience.
That's not what we are saying. That's not what we are saying. What we are saying is that we have the law. That's why that SI is in place. But we also want to tell them that the best way for us to live as a people, as a country, to be clean, is not to fear the law, but if they don't want to see sense in that, that is why we're saying we have no choice but to go in that. But in terms of the long-term measures, it will be best to ensure that we invest in changing people's attitudes. Because you asked me when we started the program, what are the lessons? Why did the Manawasa campaign fail? This is one of the failures, because it was not owned by the people. Even in government, we also have to address people in government. You recall that before the relaunch on April 28th at Soweto Market, there was an advert that was running on your channel, TV1, TV2, for about a week leading to that day. The president inviting all citizens to join him in relaunching the campaign and cleaning. Some of the government officials were asking for an invitation. So is there an invitation for me to come and attend? You can see that we have a problem. Because even when
catching up, I was going to ask
even
you.
when there is an advert, the president calling all citizens to join him that day from wherever they will be, those who manage to go there, to go and join him.
And they sit and wait for you to invite them.
And say, where is the invitation card?
I was going to ask you that probably government, when you talk about keeping the environment clean, green and healthy, some government ministries and institutions don't really understand where you're coming from, and they're not leading by example. I know if you visited a number of government institutions today, they don't look anything like green, but brown.
That's
the
true.
Boma is one of them.
Which one?
The Boma.
Oh, yes, okay, I know. Again, this is why we have said, you know, when the president was relaunching, he did give a policy direction that once in a month we should all participate, and all means just that, whether we're in government, in our private households, cleaning our own environment, just as a symbolic measure to make the statement that this is how we should be. And we have embraced this, and we are doing this. So as government, we're talking about lessons. We also have learned lessons how we need to keep our surroundings so that we can lead by example. Some of the government departments or institutions are not leading by example. And so this campaign we are talking about is intended to do just that. All of us, as we proceed in the campaign, you will see that there will be some kind of naming and shaming. We will be giving prizes to institutions that have proved to be a model in this campaign. They are keeping their surroundings green, clean, and those who are not living to the expected standards, we shall name them.
Do you think maybe it should be one of your key performance indicators as permanent secretaries and head of institutions of government that your institution must look clean and green?
Well, that is true, and we have tried.
It's government policy, and if government institutions are not implementing it, then...
Yeah, that is why I'm saying all of us, remember when we started, we talked about how did it fail. I said it was a failure of all of us collectively as a country. You know, because government is not in isolation. You know, citizens are the ones who put the leadership in place. So we have to acknowledge that collectively, as a country, we failed. But we learned lessons from that failure. And these are the lessons we're trying to make good of now so that we can make a difference. Otherwise, we were given a reminder by the epidemic last year, the cholera epidemic, that if you don't keep healthy, if you don't keep clean, hygiene, observe hygiene, you attract diseases, not just like cholera. There are so many other diseases that come through that window.
Should you, as the head of an institution or a permanent secretary in government, still stay in that office when your institution looks brown?
Well,
that's the question I should ask.
Of course, that is why I'm trying to justify why I should continue in that office, to make a difference, to first acknowledge that there is work to be done.
Not necessarily you, but you have other permanent secretaries running ministries. You have other head of institutions running government institutions.
Of course, I'm speaking figuratively and on behalf of all of us. Remember, the directive from the president, when the president speaks, he's addressing, it's not like he's talking to this one, the minister, he's addressing everyone. And even yesterday, when we were at Charleston, he repeated himself. He said, me, you see, we've seen the way I'm dressed. I'm dressed to work. I came here to work. And so as I came here, I didn't even expect to find the other ministers who are here. I expected the Honorable Kapata to be in Chilanga, Honorable Luo to be somewhere, so that I'm here just with the people I was going to find here to work. So that is a continuous message to all of us that we should lead by example, and we should not just say it, but the best way to say it is to do it. So this is a challenge. Of course, we are not going to achieve that in one activity. We have to transform our institutions. We have to make them clean. We have to make them green, so that when we are talking, go to State House, for example, when the president is talking about greening and cleaning the environment, you can see that he is leading by example. And that is what has to be translated from the highest office to the lowest person, deep into the village, into the compound. It's a campaign not just for Lusaka, but for the whole country.
How organized is this campaign? Is it just the message? Do you have lined up activities coordinated in the way they'll be implemented?
The activities will be coordinated in different ways. For example, when we go to the provinces from the government side, all provincial ministers have been tasked to ensure that they check that these activities are taking place in their districts, but we are also trying to work with everyone, the cooperating partners, for example, because it's a campaign that would require a lot of resources, financial, material, and otherwise. And we have to attract all that support from all well-meaning citizens, including the corporate citizens. And so we are lining up activities which will keep unfolding for the next 12 months, because we are taking it as a project. So we want to assess what progress we are going to make in the next 1 year, so that at the end of the year we do some kind of monitoring and evaluation again to see the points of weaknesses, the points of strengths, and how we can push it forward. So there are a number of activities taking place, and it was just launched, like I said, last month, but every month there will be something happening, there will be something going on.
Cities across the country still lack a lot of amenities and facilities that can help push this agenda forward. Most of them don't have trash bins. Some of them don't even have public toilets. A good number of cities do not have that. But you still expect people to abide by this message and campaign. Sometimes you have to carry your waste or your litter for so many meters before you can find a waste bin. You're expecting too much from the public.
Not really. All those are lessons learned, and you see changes to address all those points of weaknesses. And as a long-term measure, we are in the process of establishing or forming an autonomous solid waste management company, which is going to work along the same lines like the water utility companies, to be owned by the local authorities. This is to emphasize that, because when we're talking about cleaning, when you clean, you are collecting the waste, so you have to dispose of that waste. So there are challenges that we have also established in the process. So that process of establishing the company is very active, and before the end of the year, we hope that something will start running.
Your mention about an autonomous company brings me to the issue of local government. These are institutions, councils that are really failing to perform. They don't have the capacity. What are you doing to empower them? Without them, this message really is nothing. It cannot be implemented by central government.
Well, I think that's why, firstly, the company I talked about will be owned by the local authorities. And when we talk about capacity, it's from different angles. Usually when we talk about capacity, people just look from the human resource point of view. But there's capacity in terms of equipment and financial and all that. So this is the capacity that we're trying to address. But of course, we also have to ensure that we have enough numbers in terms of the human resource to deal with this particular specialized field. So it might sound like it's a question of promissory notes, but that's all I'm saying, that we have learned from the past, and those lessons from the past are informing our activities today.
Do you have a budget set aside for this activity? It's a big one.
No, we do not have the budget in that sense, in terms of the size of the
both for the campaign and the autonomous institution to manage waste?
That is why we are counting on the corporate partners. We have a small budget line, but it is not sufficient to sustain a campaign like this. And like I said, this is some kind of a project. It will need some resources, various resources. And so we are in active discussions. And if you have seen so far, we have received good support from the corporate citizens in the name of Trade Kings, Unilever, MTN, and we are still engaging. There are a number of commercial banks who have expressed interest to come on board. We are in the process of finalizing those discussions. So we are hoping that through these engagements, we are going to raise sufficient resources. But we don't want to focus so much on the budget, because that's why we want people to own it. Because if you believe in this activity as Grevazo, that last Saturday of the month, you will not ask someone to give you a broom and a work suit to go and clean somewhere. You will walk into Bata, get those boots, get a worksuit which you will be hanging and say, this one, every month end I have to do it. You own the process. And that's why we are emphasizing on changing people's mindsets.
So this is a project you are not willing to fund as government?
No, we are funding.
You don't have a reasonable budget, a small budget for it? Well, of course, when we talk about litter and we talk about waste, you've got councils clearly confessing. You've got the Lusaka City Council, for instance, saying they cannot even manage half of the dump site, the Chunga dump site, because they don't have equipment to compact that waste. They don't even have refuse trucks to collect garbage throughout the city. And when you're running such a huge campaign, you need a lot of money.
Of course. And when I talk about us government, I'm not talking about government as Minister of Local Government. I'm talking about government to encompass on all the local authorities, the various ministries, and to include the private sector, everyone, including the private citizens. So this is how we are looking at it. That's why we don't want to talk, because when we talk about budget, I mentioned some figures here. You invite people to come and participate. Tomorrow they will be saying, oh, okay, so, yeah. After the cleaning, what happens? Eh? Is there a drink? Is there a packed lunch? You get the point. We don't want people to be driven by such kind of issues or things. We want people to be driven by the desire to keep the environment clean, so that whether there is water to drink or no water, they will move. Whether there is no shovel from the Minister of Local Government, they will come to Minister of Local Government with 2 shovels and say, here. And this is what is happening, and we seize the opportunity to commend those private citizens who have come on board to render help even in a small way.
But that probably could be a little, those are trivial, maybe you could call them trivial, but they're bigger issues where cities, bigger cities like Lusaka, Kitwe, cannot manage their waste. Not because they do not want, but because they do not have the resource. The population has outstripped them. The rate at which citizens are generating this waste is faster than they could manage with their current resource.
So that's true. This is one of the challenges that urbanization brings. But we have already found a solution. That's why I talked about the waste management company being in the process of being established or formed. That one, once as it starts, it will start operations in Lusaka and on the Copper Belt. You know that on the Copper Belt we have Cop West, which is called managing waste on the Copper Belt on behalf of, it's a company owned by the local authorities. Now, when we establish this new entity, it is going to take charge of all the operations. So all these weaknesses we are talking about, managing the dump site, collecting, recycling, and all the other, there are people talking about waste to energy and all that stuff. This company is going to deal with all those issues.
So we are still in the futuristic mode. What people would have expected you probably is to say, we've launched this big campaign, we've put our money here, this is where it matters. Lusaka is getting 10 refuse trucks, Kitwe is getting 20, and this site is going to be managed this way, but we're still promising.
No, we are not.
What will happen in the future? The company will be formed, and this company will manage. Nothing is being managed now.
No, listen. I did indicate that this process is active. Cabinet has already given approval. In principle, we are working with our colleagues in Ministry of Justice. There are some administrative issues which we have to do. The minister has to go to Parliament to get some approvals from there. In the background, there are a lot of active work going on. We are targeting within the course of this year. Now, we are talking about an issue of hygiene. Really, do we want to fold our hands and watch everything unfold and until that campaign is in place or sufficient resources are mobilized? This is the point we are making, that there was a crisis. Remember when I said His Excellency took the men and women in uniform to clean? That's not their mandate, but because there was a crisis, they had to do that. Now, we don't want to be all the time preparing for the crisis. We want to avert the crisis. So that time, and by the way, as you know, resources are never enough. You know, that's why you find that even big economies like America, they borrow. Otherwise, they would be the ones just dishing out. So there will never be a time when the resources will be enough. Now, we will not sit down here and say, because we don't have enough resources, let's sit until those resources are in place. That's when we'll start cleaning. And cleaning, by the way, that's why we want to take it to the people. You don't want anyone to, because these things are talking about, they start from us in the home. After using the toilet, do you clean your hands? When you are eating in your yard, do you just throw stuff like that? These are the things we are talking about. And some of these things don't even require money for information.
They just require a mindset.
Yes.
I was going to ask you that you've involved the highest office. Good enough. Excellent move. And the president looks committed, quite all right. But you seem to have left out the lowest office, the person at home.
The person at home.
Probably that's why yesterday a number of communities were not cleaning, because where's the ward chairman? Where are the councillors? Did they have to go join the president?
No.
Or did they have to go in? We could have seen all the wards mobilized. If that
No, this is exactly what happened.
The fire hasn't caught on yet.
No, the fire is, I'll invite you to maybe just watch the press and ensure that, and ensure that this last Saturday of every month, you just spread all your reporters in all directions, because I don't think they had enough capacity to be all over. We had all the councillors in their various wards cleaning. That is why even the presence of the ministers who were with the with the president, you can explain it, because the president was at a school, so obviously the Minister of Education had to be there, the Minister of General Education had to entrench on this issue of education. But the rest of the councillors, the deputy mayor, as you saw, that's why I was seeing that. I was seeing the deputy mayor giving an interview, a number of councillors, they were all over. And this is where it matters most. And the moment we get it right from there, then we've done it. And that is why the president has come in to demonstrate that we know he's in the highest office, and you don't expect that the president will pick the broom and start sweeping. But for him to demonstrate, to do that, is trying to drive the point home that this is a very important activity which has to be done. And that message has to be taken right to the lowest. You talked about the councillors. You know that at the moment the ward development committees are suspended. So the councillors are just working using their own structures. But once those are in place, they will take it the same way the president has taken it at that highest level. The ward development committees will take it that way. They are the ones who will be going door to door, mobilizing the people to do the civic education. We want to invest more in that, because it's a mindset change, attitude, and we want to take the opportunity to first thank the media for the active role and the interest they have taken, but invite them also to take it as their own initiative. If they can have constantly this idea or item on their diary every day to find a way of sustaining this, because we can only sustain it through mass communication.
Let's look at the issue of recycling. This is a multi-million industry in developed countries, and we don't talk about it much here back home, and yet it could be one of the best solutions.
That is
with the waste.
That is one of the problems, because we see waste as a burden. but we should start seeing waste as a source of livelihood, as money. I always have not forgotten this line. A few months ago, I was on the Copper Belt, and the Copper Belt minister, now he was just new at the moment, Honorable Mwakalombe, he was addressing this same issue, that we need to find a way of making the waste attractive. That is the only way we are going to make our places clean very quickly. Because now what is happening is everyone is seeing waste as a burden. So in the night you've got waste, you don't know where to dump it. So Mr. Zulu is sleeping, you gather everything. Then in the morning, in the night you dump at his doorstep. He's waking up, he finds there's rubbish. So Honorable Mwakalombe says we have to find a way of making waste very attractive so that people start stealing waste instead of
not dumping it.
So when you are sleeping, you just wake up, you find people have stolen your waste. And why? Because they are seeing value in there. And this is what is happening in most
but we are seeing that, except it's not being institutionalized. We are seeing that the Chunga dump site is being raided and invaded by scavengers who are selling this waste to small companies. I don't know if
I don't want to. I'm avoiding being accused of looking into the future or speaking futuristic. That is why I said the way the new company has been designed, again learning from the past failures, is to take care of all these things, because you know that when you go to other countries, there's nothing that is thrown. And that is why you find that they are clean, because literally they make use of everything. But for us, once you throw, you generate that waste and it is in the bin or in the plastic or wherever you put it, you start looking at it as a problem. But the moment we realize that this is money, it becomes easier.
And you still have more to do, because even the way we dump our waste is not categorized or separated. In developed countries, the waste is usually separated. You've got plastic here, you dump the other waste in this bin.
Again, not
more education needed.
Not more, of course, more education needed, but you can only effectively educate if you've got something to. The campaign I'm talking about, these are the issues. Again, learning from the past, that in other countries, you have waste segmented, domestic, even the domestic itself, it is further segmented, that which can be recycled, that which cannot be recycled. This is what this company is going to do.
Do you have intentions of banning plastic, the use of plastic bags?
Yes, again, maybe this is a matter that is, again, through another process. I wouldn't want to preempt it. There is a cabinet memorandum being developed at the moment. There are various options that are being weighed. So let me not be conclusive in
answering this one. I was going to push you, because are you aware that, PS, that, well, these chain stores that have set up base in Zambia and are offering plastic bags for free, even 2 of them, just to carry one small item as a good service to you, they're charging where they're coming from. They charge for that plastic bag. But here we've got millions of plastic bags that are used once and discarded.
Yes,
they end up in drainages, they end up in all sorts of places.
Yes, that's why I say there's a process going on. There are consultations, and I know that sooner than later, Cabinet will be making a decision on that, because there are ministries involved: Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, Water and National Development, which justice, of course. There are a number of stakeholders. So consultation, there are various options being proposed. And of course, banning plastic is one of the proposals, but there are also other proposals on the table.
But not yet conclusive. Let's look at the Saturday lockdown. Government has declared business and trade lockdown every last Saturday of the month. Now, you need to be very clear. Is it 2 hours or 3 hours? I know statements have been very different in various media. I don't know if it's a journalist that have misquoted or it's government that has not spoken clearly. Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours?
I think government has spoken clearly. Honorable Mare, even a few days ago, I think if I recall, it must have been Thursday, he did address the the press to inform as a build-up to the Saturday event that official business will start at 10 hours, meaning before 10 hours, everyone is expected to be involved in the cleaning activities. You may choose to start at 04 or 05, but government expect that you would put on that day, you put in a minimum of 3 hours.
Does your shop remain, or your business remain closed up to 10?
Yes, that was the announcement, that as a way of sending the message strongly, so that we all start changing those attitudes and have something to reflect about. We will be, if we are running a shop, we will be at a shop, but will not be open for business. We will be cleaning, taking care of our surroundings, and when 10 hours ticks, then we open for official business.
You are being accused of copying this method from either Rwanda or Nigeria, and you have not considered a lot of other factors. Is that a correct position?
Well, there's nothing wrong in benchmarking. That is how a reasonable person would do. If I see you are doing something right, what is wrong in me trying to do that? That is the essence of benchmarking. You have to look at what they are doing and see what improvements you can do. Those are models. Rwanda today is being praised, but you know that about 2 decades ago, the picture in Rwanda is not the same way we are talking about. So we should be asking ourselves those questions. Why is it that Rwanda today is a shining example on the continent? Not only on the continent, I was reading somewhere, is it last week, how some European club is trying to associate itself with why? Because of all the good things that are being said. It's clean, it's green, they are leading in ICT and all that. But just go back to the genocide time. People have even forgotten that Rwanda had such an experience. Why? Because citizens have united again, learning from their past. And they resolved, this is how we are going to do things differently. So there's nothing wrong for us to learn from, I don't want to use the word copy, I'm saying learn.
Copy sounds embarrassing.
No, not really, because it's got another connotation. We can learn from Rwanda, and not only from Rwanda, any other country that is making it, not only in this area, in different areas. Look at our own weaknesses and see where we can make improvements.
Now, there's a concern here that you're not taking care of business when you close for that 2 hours, and you've picked a very critical time. That's last weekend of the month, which is in Zambia. Much of the business, much of everything happens around the month end. And that's what you've picked to close down business. And Saturday is a half day for many business institutions.
Firstly, those concerns are legitimate. But if people appreciate the reason for that, such a move, then I'm sure the approach will be different. We can say, how do we meet each other halfway? We are not saying they are closing the whole morning or the whole day. If you analyze 10 hours, some shops, they would open earliest 8, others 9, when you go to, depending on the business. And some businesses don't even operate, as you know. In fact, majority of the businesses are closed over the weekend. But we are not saying there's no business that takes place over the weekend.
A lot of business happens on the weekend. If you get into town around 10, you'll probably get out until 14.
Well, business is general. It covers different sector. That's why I said some businesses are not operating on that Saturday, not only last Saturday, but all the Saturdays. They don't operate. Some businesses operate 7 days. Others businesses operate 24/7. Now, the point we are making by moving that in that direction is to show the gravity of the activity that we are driving. That all of us, for the last Saturday, we reflect on the fact that we need to keep our environment clean. So we are called to lead by example. That's why we are being invited to first take care of our environment. Those who have the capacity.
You're forcing people to recognize this day by inconveniencing them indirectly. That's what you're saying.
No.
Push them to recognize that, well, it's cleaning today, you can't do anything.
No, it's a way of reminding. We are not forcing. All we are trying to do is to show them that, look, this must be the way of doing things. And the moment we get used, I think you see that these complaints will disappear. We are talking about only one day. In one
critical day, which is the last Saturday of the month.
Well, you just said
people will have gotten paid. No. Time.
You just
don't want to do their shopping, and
are you telling me that
business houses want to make their money right there and then?
Are you telling me that every last Saturday is a payday?
It's a busy day.
Well, those are assumptions. Some are making statements which are not researched. Others are making genuine cases. But the point to take note of is that, look, if your business will be inconvenienced, it is just for 1 hour or 2 hours at most in 1 month. Surely, can't you sacrifice? And by the way, if we don't do this now, remember I told you the rain season is coming. When we had the last cholera, didn't we close the markets for weeks? Didn't we close some supermarkets for days?
So this will help people prevent this. And now
let me make that point. No, let me make that point. The point is, we can sacrifice 1 hour or 2 hours now and avoid being closed for 2 weeks in December, when the rain season is at its peak. That's the point I'm making. So let them also see this as an investment for their own good. Because when we had that disease, we had even renowned supermarkets being closed. Markets were shut down. A lot of businesses were, you see how life was almost coming to, we could not meet as we usually, going to church became a challenge.
So life was affected.
This is what we're trying to avoid.
Is this law?
This is
I could choose not to open the shop and stay home and then show up at 10.
Yes, you could choose to do that. Now, that's why I said we are taking it as a moral issue. It's not a legal issue. And if you followed the press briefing address by Honorable Vincent Mwale, he said we are watching the space. For now, we want people to own this process. We want people to drive this on their own. But if we see that the results we are looking for are taking long to arrive, we'll have no choice but to legislate. For now, I can say it is not law. I can
choose to open my shop.
You can choose to do that, but we are saying it's a moral issue. You get the point? If it's a moral issue and you believe in what we are talking about, we don't want to be pushed, because next week, Honorable Mwale will announce that he has signed statutory instrument number so and so to move in this direction. Now, we don't want to go that. That's why, if you followed me from the time we started discussing, I was avoiding any issues that is bordering on punitive. Because we want people to own this process, to feel proud that they are doing
they
all
initiated
this.
it and made it work.
If that fails, we will legislate.
As we close, PS, I want to ask you, there's another bigger concern that you've allowed as local government millions and millions of kwacha to go to waste in bus stations and markets, and they go to cadres and other institutions that are not recognized by law. But yet, this money could help you buy refuse trucks. There's no way Soweto Market could fail to have its own refuse trucks with the amount of business taking place there.
Again, I think that issue has been on for years, as you know. Now, the challenge is that we are trying to be very simplistic in trying to look at the financial challenges for the local authorities. That is not to say that if you collected that money, and by the way, I'm not confirming what you are saying, because
it's been published before. When the market got bent, we got to hear of all sorts of figures as how much money was being lost a day.
No, things have changed. That's what I'm saying. Things have changed. And even those figures you are talking about, it is, for the example you are talking about, it is not the cadres, it's council staff. What happened there is after that fire, the council management just realigned the management team at the city market. So it had nothing to do with the cadres. It's the mentality of the staff, council staff. So after the fire, we collected a bit more. than before the fire. But using different sets of officers, not cadres. That's why I said I'm not confirming that. Of course, there have been issues before, but as government...
a huge market like that, do you agree that a huge market like that cannot fail to sustain its own and manage its own garbage?
They are
a little more efficiency, they should be able to.
No, let me reserve that response for now, because I don't want to sound like I'm just giving promissory notes. This one I will not answer. I will call you, since you don't go in the field. I say, Grevaggio, send me.
You'll call me for a lunch. Yes, thank you for coming to the interview.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest this evening was Mr. Amos Mulupenga, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Local Government. Thank you for watching, and pleasant viewing.
What are the cars saying?
Let your grandpa walk you through the farm. This is gonna be so much fun. And on this farm we have plenty of cows.
Wow!
This is where the milkshake comes from. This is how we do it. This is how we make it. We heat it up and cool it down. A little bit of flavor, chocolate and vanilla, strawberry and banana. So now you know the milky recipe. Savor the flavor, be happy as can be. Tell me now, how do you like it? This is how we make milky. The new Milk It Milkshake, the shake that moves. Trade Kings, improving lives.
Add more fun to your day with the new Yes carbonated drinks, which come in cola, orange, pineapple, ginger, cream soda, and lemonade. 6 refreshing flavors for thirst-quenching relief. So quench your thirst and stay refreshed with Yes carbonated drinks. Yes carbonated drinks, fun in every sip.
My mom is not a blanket, but she's always been there to comfort me. There is nothing I won't do to make this life the best for you. My mom never went to school, but she taught me thousands of things.
Will make it true for you.
A proverb says, "Umwana oshenda atashavani no kunaya." But for me, she's always been the best.
When it's dark, just call my name, and I will be the sun to you.
My mom is not the sun, but her embrace is just as warm. Thank you, Mom, for always being there for me.
Just call my name, and I will be the sun to you.
Trade Kings, improving lives.
Tired of long queues and endless paperwork? We are too. Pay your taxes using e-payment.